Hello guys, welcome back to the Linkcraft ranks walkthrough. So we already did ranks I through VIII, and now we're on to rank IX. Rank IX is notable because a lot of people get stuck on this rank. This is like definitely the hardest rank up to this point by a good margin, I would say. So you still gotta lock in a bit, but it's a pretty short rank overall. Once you get, let's see, the map overall, there are 4 buildings. Once you get to like the 3rd building, I think you're done with most of the hard parts of the map. It's not like it's easy, but these first 2 buildings, that's where most of the difficulty comes in. So we just need to get through the first 2 buildings, and then it gets easier from there. For this, I like to do 1 unshift tap, and then there's a timing called slow force momentum, which is basically where you jam and then sprint the tick that you land. This is a timing that I'm going to use frequently throughout the rest of the video, so it might be useful to learn. You call it slow force momentum because you're basically just hitting sprint at the latest possible timing. So that's a setup you can use for that. Cool. And then you have a Cairo ladder. Remember, you can do the face out timing, where the face out strategy where you face out like 5 or 10 degrees and then strafe, or you can do, I think it was 37.5. Yeah, 37.5 and jam, and you can land on top of the ladder. So that's another strategy you can use. Of course, for X facing, you back up slightly. This one's slightly bigger, so you can do head hitter timing, or you should be able to do some sort of force momentum, and that should probably work from some like random coordinates or something, so that you can avoid that. So you can copy these coordinates if you want to use them, and you can just force momentum it, and that way you can avoid the tick timing. So that's what you can do there. You can just do slow force momentum here. This is what's called an iron bar neo, and they also start showing up frequently from now on. The general strategy, you can either do this with or without sprinting. I prefer to do it without sprinting, and the idea for that, since this is Z facing, you would go up to the front and you would jam, and then you would typically want to add strafe at some point so you can start slowing down quickly, so that you don't like overshoot or something, right? And then the other strategy would be to go from the back, and some people like to sprint jump from the back. This is another option you have if you want it. I think oh, never mind. I was gonna say it didn't work on X facing, but I think it does work on X facing. So one other thing is that in general, we use jam timing very frequently. There's like a more consistent timing, I suppose what you would call it. It's called semi head hitter. It's a timing that you would prefer to use over jam on these types of neos, and basically what it is you jump and then you hit W on the tick that you land, like that, rather than it's equivalent in terms of distance, but it's considered more consistent because it gets rid of like a inherent luck aspect to tick timings. And then the other thing that's useful about this is that if you accidentally get A7 head hitter, which is when you hit W 1 tick before landing, it still jumps. You'll see that this doesn't say jam, this says PESI, -10 ticks or whatever. Basically, this is just like a more consistent version of jam that in general it would be helpful to learn, and I'm going to use it for the rest of this video. So whenever you come across in Z-facing iron bar neo, you're going to go up to the corner, semi head hitter. If you come across X-facing, you can do 2 shift taps backward, and semi head hitter, and that'll work. And then also, of course, if you're doing the sprint strategy, you would go from the back for both X facing and Z facing, and you would sprint. Okay, for this we can just do 2 shift taps and 3 tick. That was not the right timing, but don't worry about that. Okay, just either head hitter that or A7 head hitter. If you remember, A7 head hitter is when you hit W 1 tick before landing, and it kind of does the same thing as head hitter timing. But you can do either of them there. For this, if you remember, ice doesn't affect you and soul sand don't affect you on the very edge of the block, so you can just go to the front and then jam these. Okay, then this water is really easy. You don't have to worry about too much. Just worry about the ceiling, because if you bounce, you can like, I didn't hit my head that time, but sometimes you can hit your head if you're not careful and then get a little freaked out. So I would probably go a little lower on that. And then since this has a 3-block ceiling, just do 1 unshift tap and force momentum. This would be the strategy. And this water is not too bad. And then you're done with the first building. Now you're under your first transition. This is the start of these buildings have specific names. Like this is building 1, that's building 2, building 3, building 4. They're specifically labeled from like this rank onward. So this is the transition from building 1 to building 2 now. This first part's not too bad. You come across an X facing one, so you do 2 shift taps back, semi-head hitter. For this, you do 2 shift taps and 3 tick. For this, you have a few strategies here. You can either do it on the top or you can do it on the bottom. If you do it on the top, you're basically forcing yourself to get a tick timing, right? Because if you get jam, you're going to hit the wall and you'll just fall. So you could do head hitter, you could do A7 head hitter. But I would probably recommend doing it on the lower side because you have, you can do multiple tick timings here. Let's see. I have a spreadsheet. There it is, point 2 face 10 out. So if you go to point 2 and then face 100 degrees, there you go. Then you can just run from the back and you can get any timing from, oh wait, that's not right. Oh gosh, or is my angle, maybe my angle is bad. If you face out more, yeah, there you go. Make sure you're facing out enough. So if you face 100 degrees or more from Z.2, then you can do 4 tick, you can do 3 tick, and then just strafe in. I think you can even do 2 tick. Yeah, so all of those work for that. So those are a few options that you have there. So you can just jam. Now we have a double neo, because there are barriers here, you have to go around the right-hand side. I wouldn't do head hitter timing here, because we're trying to avoid the tick timings in general. We're trying to limit them when possible, because they're just kind of precise to pull off in a real map. So you could do run back. That's perfectly okay. You can also, what I would probably do is I would find random jam coordinates where if I just see something like that, just something random where if I mess up jam, then I can stop myself. Whereas if I messed up head hitter here and I got like jam by accident, you can't save yourself anymore. So I would find some random jam coordinates that make it across that, or use run back. Those would be the 2 main strategies there. For this, you just have a weird like ladder. I don't even know what you would call this jump. Just start at the back face about, I guess it would be 60-ish, and then head hitter and strafe right after jumping. So, and then you'll hit that wall and it'll help you like slow down in this direction when you hit that wall. So cool. All right, now this is what you call a life or death building. It's one where if you fail, then you would restart the map. For this first jump, you have a Z Cairo ladder +1. You could do the ordinary strategy where you do 90, oh gosh, there's a lag spike. You could do 95 degrees-ish and semi-head hitter and strafe, 1 or 2 ticks after jumping. You can also do the strategy where you land on top of the ladder. So if you face 37.5 and sprint jump. And then you can also, if you're worried about that, I'm not sure what coordinates would work here, but there should be some, yeah, there you go. So if you face 67 and you no sprint jam, then it'll land on top of the ladder for you. And then the advantage of this is that you can stop yourself if you got head hitter, for example. So that's what you can do there. And then this part's not much to say about this. Just be careful with those fences, they can be kind of funny. For this, just 6 tick from the back. I think 5 tick also works. You can do 6 or 5 tick. For this, probably go around the left-hand side just because there's actual blocks below you if you fail. Just go to the front, face like 155 and jam or head hitter. Some late strafe, probably. Cool. Oh, what the heck? Bro, I'm like bugging out or something. So for this, you can go straight to the cobble wall like this if you just force momentum. Keep in mind that this is fail-safe. You can jump over here if you mess up. But you can also go here and you just strafe some ticks after jumping and then sprint off. I don't know why Why my game is being so weird right now? What the heck is what's even going on? I don't know, but for this you just use the normal paint up strat, of course. I think some people do this no sprint. I wouldn't recommend doing it no sprint just because it's kind of precise. Whereas if you do it as if you're doing a normal paint up, you give yourself plenty of room to work with. Probably go around to this side instead of this side because the side's X facing. Do some sort of force momentum here, and then it's not too precise. Alright, and then we have paint ups. One thing, if you're doing, I think I said 50 degrees last time, that works if you're doing jam, or I guess it doesn't work if you're doing jam. Oh gosh, it can hit the wall sometimes. So maybe do 55 degrees out, especially when you're using semi-head hitter, because if you get A7, which is when you hit W one tick earlier, you can hit the wall. So probably face 35 and semi-head hitter and get your early strafe. That would be the idea here. And then this one face 135. It's your normal 45 degree Z facing ones. We have our second transition. We finished the second building. So for the Z ones, you just go up to the corner. For this, we'll just do 2 shift taps and 3 tick. Just semi-head hitter. This one, you can't jam it because you don't get enough distance. So one thing you could do is you could do run back. You can also do, let's see, I have spreadsheet. What does spreadsheet say? Big Neota slab, back rate 5. Okay, so you can go to here. You can face -175. 1 shift tap with A, 1 shift tap with W, and then force momentum. And that works pretty well, right? Because then you don't have to do a tick timing. So that's another thing you can do there. Cool. Why don't I relog? I don't know why it's being so buggy. There you go. Maybe I fixed it. All right. So then for these, again, the ice is a suggestion. You can just force momentum these. You don't have to chain it. So that's fine. And then you're on building 3. Now, let's see. Yeah, that was most of the hard part of the map. So from here on, I guess it's easier, but it's still not like super easy. So for this, you can 4 tick from the back and then hold space. You don't have to do them like individually. You don't have to like 4 tick and then 4 tick or whatever. You can just 4 tick and hold space, and it'll jump at the end of that second paint for you. This one probably step back a bit and like 2 tick, or you can do head hitter from the front, and that's probably fine. Be careful because the anvil is a little buggy here. You might want to right click it. I don't know if you know about anvil glitches, but generally the anvil is just really buggy. So you might want to right click it first just to prevent that, and then do some Pessy here to get into the gap. Okay, and then this is what you call, this is another like very common jump. This is called a fuzz ladder. And it's basically, you have a few strategies here. I typically just do head hitter timing with like an early strafe. Keeping in mind this is Z facing, so you can pass the pain really easily. But there are better coordinates that let you do 2 tick or 3 tick, and basically it's going to be, I think it's 0.86, and then 22.5. Maybe, or maybe it's 0.14 in this case. Okay, I have a spreadsheet. Let me read the 0.86, 22.5. In this case, it might be 0.14 then. So if you do 0.14 and then face 22.5, then you can get 3 tick or you can get 2 tick, and both of them still make it. And then that's just so you can do multiple tick downs. And then for this one, it would be 0.86, face 157.5. And then you can do 2 tick or 3 tick. But you can also do the normal head hitter strat. You can also just do some random coordinates in 2 tick. I mean, it's fail safe, right? You just have to do it once, so it doesn't really matter. You just pick something. This part you can have some trouble because you have 4 double neos. You could do 3 taps back and head hitter for each of them. You can also do 1 shift tap back and A7. You can also find some random run chords if you prefer doing like a run timing instead. For this one, you have enough momentum that you can actually fit force momentum instead, which is probably better since then you don't have to do a tick timing. So something like these chords are probably good, or maybe I can improve that a bit actually. Yeah, so something like these chords are probably good because you can get basically any force momentum timing, whereas if I was doing a tick timing where I had to run, you can only really get one timing because it's X facing, kind of hard to pass. So I'd probably use force momentum there. This one, you can use some random run strat or head hitter. I would probably head hitter this. And then this one, you can Pessy in the same way that we just did force momentum from some random chords. Or you can also Pessy straight to that like black wall over there. Let's see if I can find a good angle. So something like this is probably good. And you can just skip it entirely. It is kind of precise and it doesn't really skip anything, but you can do either of those there. Don't overshoot this gap. I have done that several times. For this, you can't use the same coordinates you had before, but you can. I would probably scoot to this corner and then head hitter on each of them with like some early strafe on each of them. And then you keep in mind that there are a ton of barriers here, so you only have to do it once. And then just have force momentum. Just line up facing like 90 degrees straight, but like slightly rightward, right? So that you don't, because if you're aligning with the cobble wall, you don't want to run into the cobble wall, so that you can fit through that squeeze. And that's why they have the cobble wall there, so that you can line up with the squeeze. Cool. And then one setup that's kind of nice is you can do force momentum on cobble walls like diagonally. That's a nice setup to remember. Triple neo -1. Find random jam chords using practice mode. Guess like, oh, maybe these chords will work, and then they don't. So then we'll try slightly different coordinates, like maybe these will work. And then they don't, so we'll try something else. And then voila, we found coordinates that work. So then I just go with those. So that's pretty much what you do for those. The more lenient neos, if this was like -0, for example, though, then you would probably want to use like an existing strategy. But since it's -1, it's overall pretty lenient. So you don't have to worry too much about it. And then this is the last transition. I think you can jam this. Yeah, you can jam that. And then you can also jam this. For this, I think you can just back up and jam or head hitter. You can just do a semi-head hitter. It's just more precise than a normal single neo though, so keep that in mind. You can also find something like this. I don't think I would recommend it just because it's kind of awkward to control that momentum, but you can also do that. For this, you don't have to do head hitter. You remember that there are a couple strategies here. You can do head hitter if you're wild like that. You can do force momentum. Some people like to do force momentum on these. I personally don't, just because I think it's kind of hard to control. What I would recommend is X 0.8, and then you're gonna face I think it's like 133. And then you can strafe or you can do it without strafing, but basically you can get 1 tick or 2 tick, and both of them will still make it. Now if you get jam, you're screwed, but basically either timing will work there. And then I think if you scoot back more, you could probably also find something where like 2 or 3 tick work. In general, just try to find a timing that works for 2 different tick timings so that like both work, right? You don't want to do one where you're forced to get a specific timing. For this, I think if you do max, if you do max force momentum, if you just do force momentum from here and tap space on the melon, then that's a setup for that. For this, you don't have much choice. You kind of have to do 3 shift tap back and head hitter. I think you could probably find a force momentum for this, or like a Pessy or something. I don't know, I wouldn't bother. I think it's kind of pointless. Just do your 3 shift taps and 5 tick. For this, don't do any taps, just Pessy and hold space, and then it'll chain that for you. For this is I guess it's a fuzz ladder -0, but it's a fence. So for this, you're gonna face out a ton, of course, and you're gonna do semi head hitter with some early strafe. Something like that will probably be good. And then we'll just do the same thing again, face out a bunch, semi head hitter. For this, you have slightly less than 1 block of momentum. You can use slow force momentum where you jam and then sprint when you land. I would probably recommend that. Alternatively, if you don't like slow force momentum, you can do 1 unshift tap, 1 shift tap, and then Pessy while holding space. Oh, that didn't make it. Oh no. Did I remember wrong? Maybe I remembered wrong. It might be 2 shift taps. It might be 2 shift taps. Yeah, okay, if you do 1 unshift tap, 2 shift taps, then you can do Pessy while holding space, and then that'll make it for you. But I'll probably recommend the slow force momentum there. There's barriers here, I think. Yeah, so it's fake, it's not a real hole. For this, probably 1 shift tap, 5 tick, and then do some like late strafe, because you want to keep in mind that this cobble wall is X facing. It's actually pretty easy to accidentally hit that cobble wall if you're not careful. So probably do something like that would be good. These are actually a lot more lenient than they look. I think that they look kind of scary, but they're actually not that bad. Let's see, there should be, yeah, so these coordinates are okay. 0.2, 0.6, face 162 are pretty good semi head hitter coordinates, and you just do some strafe like a few ticks after jumping. So I want you to do the same thing again, 0.6, 0.2, yeah, like that. And I think you can do the same thing again here. Face 162. Yeah, so you just do that on all of them. That should be good. Right, and then you just jump into that, or you can, I like to head hitter this. I mean, you just have to do it once. It doesn't really matter. Just make it. Alright, now we're on to Sky, but first we have to do a triple neo. Now, presumably, if you've gotten this far, you've probably already done a triple neo before, but if you haven't, well, there's a first for everything, I guess. Start in this back corner. You're gonna face between 12.5 and like 12.8 degrees, and then go into practice mode. The general idea, make sure you're holding space the whole time. Don't strafe at all, so only hold W in space and sprint, right? And then you're gonna want to do something called pre-turning, which is essentially where you're turning before you jump. So just an example of what that would look like. Here's what like a good turn, oh, that was a bad turn. Here's what a good turn would look like. Something kind of smooth, where you can really like try and make your momentum straight, because you notice that our momentum, we're getting a lot of speed outward. We want to try and get that straight, but we don't want to strafe, because we can lose a bunch of distance in the process. Let's see, is there anything else? Yeah, that's about all for triple neos. If you don't turn early enough, then it will look something like this, where you're like going way too far outwards. That's kind of what the point of the pre-turning is. You want to make sure that you're facing straight the moment that you do that last jump. Is the general idea for this triple neo. Alright, now we're on Sky. Overall, pretty easy as long as you're careful. Just take your time, probably jam these. Or if you're super scared, I actually did, when I was IX, I did force momentum here because I was, super scared. You can do that if you want, take your time. I think you can force momentum this. Yeah, just be careful not to over jump that slime. It looks like you could over jump it. For this Neo, just do force momentum facing something outward like that. That's pretty much all there. Use water, not too difficult. Don't, I see this too often. People end up doing something like this, where they like sprint off because they're like holding sprint while trying to climb into the water. So whenever you're going up these slabs, make sure you're holding W and shift, so that even if you get up when you don't expect it, you don't like fly off, right? For this, you can skip here. If you jump and then flip the trapdoor, you can just go straight into this one. And then because we're polite, we're gonna flip it for the next person. It's just good etiquette. And then this, of course, it's X facing, but you can probably do some force momentum. Of course, you don't need to land on top of the ladder like I just did, but something like this would be fine. And then with some strafe with D and turn out. Here, I would go from the fence here instead of from the slab, because if you go from the slab, I see too often people will like bonk this ceiling and like slide off. Whereas if you go straight from the fence, it's literally entirely straight, right? So there's no like conceivable way for you to like overshoot the gap. So I would go from the fence there. And then from this, you just do semi-head hitter, semi-head hitter. For this last one, as always, you can do semi-head hitter. Find some, I guess this works, Z.23. If you do semi-head hitter from here and tap on the pane, then that should work. If I know people who have failed this because they'll do something like that where they'll overjump the pane. So just be careful about that. I think you could also, if you want to, you could probably find some force momentum where you either hold or tap space or something from the back there. Just find something. Don't overjump it. You know, there's a lot of dumb mistakes you can make there. All right, rank X. This one is a greenhouse. I kind of like this rank. This one's cool. It is really big, but it is, like a lot of the other ranks, actually relatively short compared to how big it looks. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. Alright, just head hitter this. Alright, we have our first kind of awkward jump. This is an X-facing corner right here. So when you're trying to land on it, it's like hard because you need to get like a ton more backward speed. Whereas if this was a Z-facing corner, we could have just done something like that and we could land, but it's a little more awkward. There are coordinates for this. Let me pull them up. 164. So what you can do is if you go at this corner and then face negative 164, and then you're gonna jam with W and D at the same time, and then it'll land on top of there for you. And it just does some magic so that you can actually land on it even though it's X facing, which normally you wouldn't be able to. Okay, probably don't force momentum that just because that's kind of long. I'll probably say head hitter from the back of this ladder because that's actually kind of a far distance otherwise. For this, we're going to use our normal ladder slide strategy where you drop down. Okay. And then force momentum this. This is really easy. You can just force momentum that if you want to because it's just a 4-block jump. Cool. We have our iron bar neos. You just semi-head hitter these like always, or do the sprint strategy, whichever one you prefer. For this, that's a 3-block high ceiling. If you remember, those make you jump lower. So this jump is actually like fairly precise, and if you were to do this with only 1 block of momentum, that would be like a relatively difficult jump for this rank. So you have to make use of this momentum in order to make it easier. What you're going to want to do is do a shift tap and then force momentum while holding space. And try, oh no, server's restarting. Oh gosh. You're going to want to force momentum while holding space. And then that'll get enough momentum so that you can make the jump. And you just climb up this ladder. And then single knee up, just head hitter timing that since it's Z facing. And then we have a block to ladder neo. Probably just head hitter timing this with some late strafe. Something like that would be the strategy. I think I'm gonna get kicked from the server here in a second. Okay. We're starting, so we'll just get back into it. For this, you can go from here. I always liked going from down here because if you remember that short pane is smaller than a long pane. You just go under. That's just something fun. This cactus plant in general has some kind of hard jumps. Basically, all of them you're going to do head hitter timing. For this one, you know, you're gonna do your head hitter timing, late strafe, something like this would be good. Paint up, do semi head hitter. This one I think you can still semi head hitter. It's just kind of precise, 135-ish, and you can still semi head hitter. But if you want, I might recommend doing like 140 and head hitter though, just because it's easier for distance. And then this one's the particularly hard one. It would be an inverse Cairo pane. So what I think some people, they like to go to this corner and they would face like 170 and semi head hitter. I feel like that's kind of precise because I feel like you kind of have to get A7 in order to get enough distance. It feels kind of precise to me. If you want to do that, you can. I would say probably do 170 and head hitter instead with a late strafe. Or if you prefer early strafe, you could face like 172. I would probably do early strafe. So you can do 170, 172 and head hitter for that. And then from here, it's not too bad. Cool. You can just go here and jam for that. Then we have our first transition. This is shelf 1. The sections on this map are called shelves. So this is S1, and then this is the transition S1 to S2. Yeah, I mean, you force momentum, early strafe-ish, and shift on the ladder, of course. I don't know why the button is there. It's for no reason, I guess. And then you can just run across here. Not too hard until we get to a later part of this transition. We have probably one of the most like devious jumps on the map. And a lot of people on rank X get stuck on this jump. So we're going to spend a bit of time on that one when we get there. For this slime, you can, I would probably just go through here, but you can technically force momentum and go straight to here. Alright, now we have what's called, I think it's, I always get mixed up. I think this is a Tyrone ladder. It's an extended Cairo ladder. It's 2 blocks instead of 1 block, right? So there are a few strategies here. It's going to be pretty difficult, especially because this is X facing. Conventionally, you might do a head hitter timing, so you might face 172-ish and then do head hitter with like a 3-tick, 2-tick strafe. That is something that can work, but it's kind of precise. It's also a tick timing. It's just kind of gross in general. Another thing I see people do sometimes is sometimes they'll like face, I think 170, no, I'm crazy, 175. Sometimes I see people do something like this. You can force momentum and then turn out and then do 1-tick strafe. I would recommend, there's a strategy that I'll show you that works for even if this is 1 block higher. And that's, you're going to use these coordinates. You're going to go to 0.51z against the wall, not on this side. It's against the wall. And then you're going to face 172 and then go into practice mode. And then the idea is you're going to run for 5 ticks and strafe 1 tick after jumping. And basically, no matter what turn you do, you're not going to accidentally hit this wall because the coordinates have been optimized. Even though it feels like I'm going to hit the wall, I actually don't end up hitting the wall. So these coordinates are in general pretty good. You can even make it if you 4-tick as long as you get a later strafe. Whereas if I was using this and I jammed, I'm basically cooked most of the time. So I would probably say use these coordinates. I think that there are other coordinates. Let me see if if this has a. Okay, all right. There are other coordinates. So if you use z.9 168, here's some other coordinates. z.9. If you don't like the other ones, I would recommend the other ones, but 168. And then from here you can do 1 shift tap with D. And then I think this is a basically do any Pessi timing and hold space and then strafe 1 tick after jumping. It's both of them have strafe 1 tick after jumping, but this one you hold space. So if you prefer this, you can do this one over the other strategy. For this, you just do semi head hitter. We have a ladder here. You can do the Cairo ladder and go to there. You can use either of the like land on the ladder or the jam and land or the jam like that. But you can also, I would probably just do force momentum and then go straight to this block because this is actually just a 3+1, so you can just skip that jump. I think these barriers are kind of scary, but just like do force momentum for all of them, basically. And then you don't have to worry about like estimating coordinates or anything. And it's not too bad. And then we're on section 2, or shelf 2. Before we do shelf 2, there is like a major skip for this section, but it is like pretty precise. So you do all of this parkour and then you end here. And then section 2 to section 3, you do this slime and you go to the red carpet right here, and then this would be the you would go onto that part next. But you can actually go straight from this shelf onto that slime to that carpet, but it's like really precise. If you're rank X, I wouldn't recommend trying this, but you can. I have some coordinates that I wrote down. So one strategy you can use is if you go to these coordinates, x.45, z 8.7, face 152, and then you do 4 tick, I think. And then you have to do a 45 strafe in order to get enough distance, but these are some coordinates that you can use if you want to try to do this skip, but it's for more advanced players. You kind of have to do this with a 45 strafe or you really don't get enough distance, so that's something to keep in mind. There's some other strategies. You can mess around with that if you want. I would recommend just doing it the normal way. I just wanted to mention that that was something that existed. For this, of course, just do head hitter, click the button, go across. Not much to say there. Cool. One thing that's nice about, let's see, you want to jump out of the ceiling, but you don't want to do Pessy, because if you do Pessy, then you get like so much speed, right? You can actually do a no sprint Pessy, which is when you jam without sprinting and then hold space. So that's an alternate way to do Pessy if you still want to Pessy them but without getting way too much speed. And of course you use the normal ladder slide strategy here where you drop down. You don't even have to do this slime, just like land anywhere. You can even land in the web if you want. I'm failing to land in the web. And then just shift on the slime and then jump over here. You don't even have to do the slime. Just jump here. For this one, it's actually like, it's harder than it looks, I think. I liked doing, I think can you do taps? I don't know how many taps you can do. I like doing Pessy here. Okay, do one shift tap and then do Pessy and hold space. Oh, that actually gets too much speed. Okay, maybe just do it from, or maybe I'm running off on X. Okay, go from the back, and then do Pessy, and then like turn in, right? And it's nice because you don't have to do a weird tick timing in the middle of the turn. Like I could technically do something like that, but it's kind of awkward to do the jump timing and the turn timing at once. So you can do either of those. Alternatively, if you're fine with a forced tick, I think you might be able to head hitter this. Yeah, you can head hitter that from, what angle is that? Like 163-ish, and you can just head hitter that if you prefer not turning. For this one, probably go up to the corner, either semi head hitter, or if you want a little more speed, you can do head hitter with an early strafe. And then you would do some smooth turn inward, and make sure you don't strafe too early like I just did, and because you'll end up hitting the ladder. I'll do my no sprint Pessy strat here, where you jam, and then line up with, before you click the button, you don't have to do it like that, just line up with the ladder like this, and then jump, and then you already know you'll be on top of the ladder. And from here, we'll just Pessy out of that ceiling. And now we're on the transition, so I think there's a strategy for chaining this. You might be able to jam from here. Oh, that might be good. Yeah, okay, so you could semi head hitter from the front of this red wool, and then you'll make this by plenty, right? I mean, I made that by like a full block, so. Okay, and then the rest of this transition, you have like a ton of 3 block jumps. Like, I don't know why they have this many 3-block jumps. Just take your time. The one thing is that they suddenly have ice, and yeah, it just like keeps going. You have like probably like 50 3-block jumps here, probably more. Just be careful with the ice. I would probably stay on the left-hand side when you're doing this one, just so you don't get the ice effects and avoid its hitbox. But once you're done, you do some barrier parkour. And then you have a couple more jumps before shelf 3. Probably force momentum on this. These fuzz ladders, keep in mind that when it's X facing, you want to face out plenty. The general strategy would be to face out a bunch, and then you're gonna take advantage of strafing to bring yourself in. One thing is that you wouldn't want to like do a turn like that without strafing. In general, we try to use strafing like this, where I add A instead of turning all the way, because if you think about what happens when you, I'll just like demonstrate. If you think about what happens when you strafe, it basically instantly turns you 45 degrees, right? Whereas if I'm trying to like turn 45 degrees, you know, I'm a human. I'm really bad at turning, right? I can't turn 45 degrees precisely every time. So you typically want to use strafing to assist you, so that you don't have to like rely on your human ability to turn precisely, right? And it's generally just better at slowing down. The one thing to be careful of is you want to make sure you face out enough, because since these are X facing, it's actually really easy to hit them. So probably semi-head hitter, early strafe, facing out plenty, and then shift on the ladders. And that's the general idea there. You do the same thing here. I should run that. And then you're on to shelf 3. For this one, just do 1 shift tap and 2 tick. Sorry. This is 7 blocks. That's like the standard setup for 7 blocks of momentum. We have a 3-block ceiling Cairo ladder +1, and it's X facing. So for this one, probably go to the corner and head hitter. If you want a more advanced strategy, I think I might be wrong, but you might be able to use their same coordinates from S1 to 2. Let me see. Okay, yeah, so you can kind of, if you do like a strafe on jump, I probably wouldn't recommend this, but you could strafe on jump and do some like really sharp turn if you want. That's something you could do. I would probably just recommend face like 5 out, head hitter with a 1 tick strafe, and that means like strafe right after jumping, and do some like sharp turn in. That's probably what I would recommend for that. This next jump, I don't know if there's a name for this, but this is like probably the hardest jump on the map. So you have a few strategies here. All of them you don't have to turn, luckily. None of them you have to turn. So first strategy is if you face 65, do 1 unshift tap and then practice. If you run and then 4 tick, and then the moment you jump add A, then you notice I can make it without even turning. And then for stopping yourself, jump again when you land. You don't want to do something like this in general, where you like turn in, because it's just harder to stop yourself that way. I mean, you can do whatever you want. Just be able to stop yourself when you land, I guess. And then another time, if you don't like strafing when you jump, you can do face, I think 61. I think 61. Oh no, sorry, I think it's 60. If you face 60, 1 unshift tap, and then, oh, that's not working. Maybe it's precise. Maybe it's 60.5. Oh gosh. All right, I don't know. But another strategy you can use is if you just face 65 again. If you know pain force momentum, which is basically when you do 4 tick Pessy. It's when you jump and you hit W 4 ticks after, so you do Pessy 4 tick, and then run 1 tick when you land. It's kind of a more advanced timing, but if you want to use that, you can. And then you can also do face 60 and pain force momentum with a 1 tick strafe. All of those you don't have to turn. Of those, I would probably recommend do the face 65, 1 unshift tap, run, and then strafe on jump. And then jump again to stop yourself. Cool. And then this is a random skip that you can do. And then this is the transition from shelf 3 to shelf 4 over there. Just do that. Probably 3 shift taps just for safety. Click it and then run. Oh, I just screwed that up. 1, 2, 3. 3 shift taps. And then run afterward. Cool. And then from here, it's like pretty simple. It's just like 3 block jumps. Nothing too hard here. Force momentum, of course. And then just, you don't even have to bounce on the slime. You can hold space. You can do whatever. Just land down here somewhere, anywhere down here. For this, you have the first water 2 block jump. General strategy, if you didn't have more momentum, there's a better strategy, but you would typically want to either get 1 bounce, and you would have to get like a really optimal bounce, and it's actually pretty hard to learn that. There's also, just as a side note, there are some more like advanced strategies where you're able to get like 2 bounces and get even more speed, but you don't have to do any of that because I think if you go from 0.0 and then face like that, you can just hold space and you can make it straight over. So it's pretty easy. The angle that you're facing really doesn't even matter that much either, or I guess maybe you can't turn that much, but use 0.0 face 46 and then jam while holding space, and then just turn and don't strafe, and then that works pretty well. For this you have, it's like a 3+1, but it's from Pains, I guess. Face 94, I think. 1 shift tap with A, 3 shift taps with W, and then from here 4 tick. Oh, okay. I think you have to face out more. Instead face 94.5, 1 shift tap A, 3 shift taps W, and then 4 tick. There you go. So you can also just strafe without turning is another option. I would probably recommend that. So from these coordinates you can 4 tick and then strafe without turning. So that's what you can do there. Just a 4x1, so just force momentum and then turn out. Same thing here. Okay, you can use the same coordinates as from IX, which it's just going at a pane back wall basically, and face 22.5, and then do 2 or 3 tick with an early strafe. That's the idea here. So in this case, 157.5, and then 2 or 3 tick with an early strafe. Just be careful because this is life or death right there. And then this is the same thing as earlier, so face like 5 out, head hitter, 1 tick strafe, get a sharp turn in. For this, I think if you go from here, max Pessy while holding space. Yeah, that works. There's probably also like maybe like head hitter. Yeah, okay, well, you can mess around. I think that you might be able to, if you go from like here maybe, so you burn some speed. There might be something. You can probably find a jam setup if you don't like that max Pessy jam. Have to climb a few trapdoors. And then once you climb the trapdoors, get up here. And then we're on to Sky. So we're on the home stretch and the ends over there, right? Let's see. It's not too bad, but there are a few ways you can be dumb. For example, when I played this guy, I failed this jump because I tried to chain from here. I tried to go like whatever and do that, and then I failed it. I would say just go from here. Do you want to keep in mind that even though this is diagonal, because the player hitbox can go like slightly off the block, you don't really need that much of an angle in order to make this. So you don't need to face like this. You know, you could face something like this probably, and that would still work. So face something like this, and then do 1 shift tap and force momentum normally, and then just test it in practice mode to make sure it works and you're comfortable with it. You might get too much speed there, so just slow down. 3 shift taps. Cool. Awesome. And then since it's a Z facing, you can go up to the front and jam. Basically anything works for this. That's not very precise. And then for this, just run from the back and tap and jump once you get on top. Basically any timing will work for this, so it's not that precise. And then just click the sign from here. And then you're on to XI. I think that's all I'll do for this video. So I hope that was helpful. See you in the next one.